Friends, if everybody could please find your seats. On behalf of the family, I want to thank everybody for coming. I also want to extend that same welcome to those who are joining us on the live stream. Just as a gentle reminder, if anybody has a cell phone, please take a minute to turn it on silent. Officiating our service today is by Frederick Reeves.
Shiviti Adonai lenegdi tamid ki mimini ba'alemot lachen samach libi v'yagel kevodi af besari yishkon lavetach Ki lo tazov nafshi elishol lo titein chasidecha lerot shachat todieni orach hayim sova semachot et panecha Ni'imot bimincha netzach, Shiviti Adonai, lenegdi tamid, Ki mimini bal ehemot. I have set the Eternal One always before me. God is at my side, I shall not be moved. Therefore does my heart exult and my soul rejoice. My being is secure. For you will not abandon me to death, nor let your faithful one see destruction. You show me the path of life. Your presence brings fullness of joy. Enduring happiness is your gift. Death has taken our beloved Ronald Jericho. Our friends grieve in their darkened world. In their silence there is lamentation, and in their tears there is loneliness. Lost in their sorrow, may they find the presence of loving friends. Hear them, God. Be with them. For Ron's love that united us in life and which death cannot sever. For his companionship that we shared along life's path and which continues through the tenderness of memory. For the gifts of his heart and his mind that brought us joy and happiness, and is now a precious remembrance. For all these and more we give our thanks to God. In this time of grief, we listen to the voice of our sacred scriptures that brings us the ever-new message of God's nearness. It tells us of our kinship with the Creator, in life as in death, in joy as in sorrow, in light as in darkness. I invite you to join with me as we recite the words of the 23rd Psalm. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. He restoreth my soul. He leadeth me in the paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. Thou anointest my head with oil, my cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. In his sorrow, Job cried out, God has given, God has taken away. Blessed be the name of God. An ancient people, we are well acquainted with grief and the valley of shadows. Death and sorrow are not strangers to us, yet the centuries have taught us that a good name endures beyond the grave, and that there is strength in faith. And so with Job we say, God, you have given. You gave us a loved one who will not be forgotten. For all that was good and enduring in his life, we offer the deepest thanks of our hearts. And God, you have taken away. We pray for the strength to turn our broken hearts into an altar of trust, before which we acknowledge your sovereignty and love, as we say, blessed be the name of God now and forever. We are here to remember Ronald Jericho. Ron was a man of simple tastes and simple pleasures. He was the definition of a family man, always concerned about taking care of his family, making sure that they had what they needed. Ron was born on June 9th, 1942, to Claire and Ludwig Jericho, who had immigrated to this country from Germany. He was an only child, born at Michael Reese Hospital, and he, like many German Jews in Chicago, grew up on the South Side. His father ran a grocery store, and there were two key lessons of life that Ron learned from his father. The first was a strong work ethic. His father worked long hours and was diligent in providing for the family. And the second was that spending time with your family is important. Ron did not feel that he had enough of his own father's time, and so he made sure that he gave plenty of his time to his own family. Now, to show the kind of student that Ron was as a child, I think that we could reflect on his language lessons. His grandparents had come to the U.S. as well, and his mother's parents did not speak English very well. And so Ron was asked to spend time with them, specifically so that he could help them improve their English. Their English did not improve. But before too long, when people made remarks in German, Ron was able to respond. He claimed not to have known German, but he seemed to manage pretty well for a language that he did not know. Ron attended Hirsch High and then the University of Chicago, where he studied statistics. In a word, he hated it. I'm not sure that he ever had a nice thing to say about UChicago. He reserved his alma mater attentions for Roosevelt University, where he got his master's degree in accounting. When Ron was 27, he was set up on a date. A cousin of his was in a class with a student teacher, and she was asked if she would like to, be set up with a nice Jewish boy. And Lori said yes, and so she and Ron started seeing one another. Now, loving and loyal are two words I think that we could use to describe Ron, because the two of them fell in love very quickly. In less than a year, they were married on August 16th, 1970, and Ron loved Lori deeply, so much so that even 20 years after her death, he never dated another woman. It was Ron and Lori forever. They had been living in an apartment on the South Side, but then, when Lisa was born, the family relocated to Glenview, to a home that Ron lived in for around 40 years. They started their family life there, adding Robert to the family before too long. And they had something of a traditional kind of family. Lori stayed home with the kids. Ron went to work. He spent much of his career as an accountant for waste management. He worked hard, but he valued his time with his family highly. He may have had to come to the game after school in a suit and tie because he didn't have time to go home and change, but come to the game he did. He wasn't able to be home every single night to put his kids to bed, but he did so several times a week, and it was one of the greatest sources of joy for him to spend that time with his children. And the family was involved in a number of things together as the children were growing up. They belonged to BJBE, where Ron served one term on the board, which, if any of you have ever been involved with a synagogue board, you will know that that is probably one more than is sufficient. And the family enjoyed taking family vacations, particularly driving to St. Louis to watch Ron's beloved Cardinals play. Now, I think this is where his undergraduate in statistics actually came to the fore, because most Southsiders are White Sox fans. And if not the White Sox, okay, if you have to, the Cubbies. But not Ron. He wanted to be a fan of a team that might win every now and again. And so he followed the Cardinals. For the family, the best holiday was the 4th of July. The Leklinskys would come over to share. They would go out for fireworks and the taste of Chicago. And as Lisa and Lori celebrated, there were no dishes to do. Unfortunately, Lori died much too early, passing in 2003. Of course, this was incredibly difficult for Ron. He focused his life onto his children and later his grandchildren, always wanting to take care of them the way that Lori had taken care of him. Now, of course, this transition to being a man who lived alone called for some acquisition of skills. He had grown up in his mother's house, and then he moved into his wife's house. And, he wasn't fully on board with this idea that red socks don't get washed with white shirts. But it's the kind of lesson that you only need to learn once. And care for his children and grandchildren he did. He showered them with love, sharing recipes like his special fruit salad, which has a cherry pie filling base. I don't think that we could accuse Ron of having been a foodie. After about 10 years of living on his own in Glenview, he was found doing something which he had been specifically told not to do, which was to go up onto the roof to make some repairs. And when that was the case, I'll say that his children encouraged him to relocate, and he was able to find an apartment in the residence tower above Rob and Hillary's townhouse. And it was in bringing him back to the South Side that brought me to come to know Ron. He wanted a nearby synagogue to be a part of, and so he joined KAM Isaiah Israel. And I will say, shortly after he joined, he realized just truly how much help we needed in our office on the accounting side, because we did need it. And he initiated a project to get our books set right. And he became a calming presence in our office. Dry humor, yes, but calm, easygoing. And his easy wisdom helped us get our books into much better shape. Well, it is never true to say of someone that they have not lived before they become a grandparent, because obviously you have had to have lived something of a full life to become a grandparent. It is certainly true that being a grandparent to Layla, to Bryn, and to Eliana brought him life in a new way. He delighted in his grandchildren, and they in him. He also rededicated himself to philanthropic causes in Lori's memory. He had taught his children the value of tzedakah, especially the value of being anonymous in your giving, and the value of helping someone to the point that they did not need help any longer. He was inspired by the work of the Inspiration Corporation, and he established a fund there in Lori's name, as he also did at Roosevelt University. To share some memories of his father, we now welcome Robert to say a few words.
All right, close your books. I always wanted to say that during a portion of a Jewish ceremony. So, those of you with BJBE ties will get it, because that's what my old rabbi Mark Shapiro would say before a high holiday sermon. It meant sit back, relax, and clear your mind. Sometimes we could follow along perfectly, and sometimes it was a high holiday sermon. Don't worry, Rabbi, yours are always better. Always, always.
You don't have the butter.
So I often talk at work about knowing how someone won the day. Did they do the best thing to get to the goal that they and the team wanted or needed to get to? What I do think about is what needs to be looked at to understand if somebody's winning before the results really come in. It's easy to spot these at the macro level, like for a business. And in our house growing up, there was always lots of business talk in a Wall Street Journal around. So in business, you would look at your 10K or your annual report, but that's really too late. You need to be able to identify these as early as possible. So this is a eulogy, so you know what comes next. I'm going to talk about how my father won in every way possible. So we'll start with the obvious and look around at this incredible group of family and friends who dropped what they were doing, who took or changed flights, who drove through the snow with my sick nephew, or those who expressed sorrow at not being able to come in from Sedona or Henderson or other places watching via webcam, which I'm making sure to look up at, honoring and celebrating the life of my father. It's a big win. 15 love, which is tennis scoring, because my girls insisted that they needed to play the Fisher-Price tennis game that was in my dad's house. But what were the daily habits that helped him win every day? Though he'd be the last one to tell you. The first thing that anyone will immediately say is his kindness, thoughtfulness, and dry sense of humor. It's knowing when to swing by someone's office and offer thoughtful compliments or supportive encouragement when he knew it was a hard day. Hillary and I were fortunate to be with my father most days when he would complain about the awful school pickup line, but absolutely adored his time with Layla and Bryn, taking them up to the pool in the summer or sleeping during their piano lessons, and then joining us for dinner. When I told our old neighbors and other people in the building, it's the first thing they said. So kind, so wonderful. Even the nurses at the hospital would say it to us. He's just so incredibly nice. 30 love. They're the monthly habits. As Lisa and I were working through his financials for tax season, as the children of any accountant should be doing in springtime, we were looking at the quantity of donations he's made over the past year. Seemingly unrelated funds, we started noticing a very clear pattern: equity. Giving opportunity to those who did not have the same opportunities he or either of us received. Hard work can and should be recognized, and barriers removed so hard work doesn't need to be harder. 40 love. So, sometimes you think you've achieved a goal, match point, right? But the game changes a little bit. Lisa and I weren't sure what was going to happen to our father after Mom died almost 20 years ago. They never argued, or at least did the most incredible job hiding it, and were truly symbiotic. It was touch and go for about 10 years until Layla was born, and his new goal was devoted grandfather. You'd think they invented the ice cream machine tracker just for trips to McDonald's, for the girls, of course. So he was back in the game. The annual habits. One of the highlights of my year is our annual meeting with Inspiration Corporation to go over the scholarship fund my father set up in my mom's memory. Everything had to be in her name. He never wanted credit for himself, just to provide credit to others. Ever the accountant, of course, the balance sheet had to be perfectly accurate. We are so sorry, Shannon. But what he really wanted to see was the results. How much the right help in the right place can make such a huge impact. Game, set, match. But the real winning in life is that your example carries on. So, the love of family and friends is obvious here today. The bond between my sister and I is incredible. Oh, sorry, me. It is incredible. Not even a single pause reaching any decision with regard to our father's care. When Lisa spoke with my girls about charitable giving while my dad was in hospice, their first question was if someone would still buy coats for those in need every winter like Grampy did. Hall of Fame legacy. My father didn't just win a day or his life. He set in motion a dynasty. His teaching and example will live with all of us forever. May his memory be a blessing. Amen. Come on, Brady.
We're going to welcome Bryn, Ron's granddaughter.
Okay, flip the milk crate.
Grandpa was the most loving and awesome grandfather ever. It's because he always did the best things for our family. He always donated all of his time to spend with us. He always looked on the bright side, even when things were tough. When me and my sister were good, he would take us to McDonald's for ice cream because it was all of our favorite desserts. He is always going to be in our hearts no matter how far away he is. I love you, Grandpa.
Do you still need the stool?
It might be too high for me.
Okay.
I will admit that whenever, whether it's a wedding or a funeral, I hear that either a young child or a pet is going to be involved in the ceremony, I always get a little trepidation, but it was not necessary this time. Bryn, thank you so very, very much for your very, very beautiful words that you had to share with us. Of course, we could never say all that there is to say about a person's life in a short time. As we remember Ron, we should remember the sweet, warm, giving man that he was. And the way that we can remember him best is by putting the lessons that he taught through the way that he lived his life into practice. Loving family, caring for family, sharing time with close friends, helping those in need. When we do these things, we will, as Ron did, help bring us closer to the time when all will be right again. We take a few moments for silent prayers of reflection. I'll invite you to please rise. Hail, Malei Rachamim, Shochein Bamromim, Hamtzei Menucha Nechona, Tachat Kanfei HaShechina, Im Kedoshim Utohorim Kzohar Harakia Mazhirim Et Nishmat Uven Ben Aryeh Leviv Shalach Leolamo Bal Harachamim Yastirehu בסתר כנפיו לעולמים, ויצרור בצרור החיים את נשמתו. אדוני הוא נחלתו, וינוח בשלום על משכבו, ונאמר, Amen. Compassionate God, eternal Spirit of the universe, grant perfect rest in your sheltering presence to Ronald Jericho, who has entered eternity. God of mercy, let him find refuge in your eternal presence. Let his soul be bound up in the bond of everlasting life. God is his inheritance. May he rest in peace. Let us say together, Amen. You may be seated.
Friends, this concludes our service here at the chapel. Interment will take place immediately at the family's plot at Ridgelawn Cemetery. For those who are joining the family in procession, a procession will be forming just outside the parking lot. If you're going in procession, please make sure you obtain an orange funeral safety sticker as well as a magnetic flag to place on the rooftop portion of your vehicle. Please make sure your bright headlights and hazard lights are on at all time while in procession, and please drive as safely as you can to the car in front of you, especially while going through the intersection. Please use your horn liberally while in procession to the cemetery. Upon return from the cemetery, the family will be sitting Shiva at the Friedel residence, 173 Avon Avenue in Northfield, until 8 p.m. Memorial contributions in Mr. Jericho's memory can be made through the Laurie Jericho Scholarship Fund at Inspiration Corporation. That information is on the folder you received on the way in, and for those of you who are online, that information is on the funeral home website. The following individuals have been asked to serve as pallbearers. When I call your name, if you could please stand next to Mr. Jericho's casket. Mike Smith, Steve Smith, Jay Friedel, Ted Fromm, Michelle Gale, and Adam Greenberg. At this time, I've asked everyone to please rise as we escort the casket and the family and the rabbi from the chapel.